Hi class. Today we are going to talk about how to add and subtract decimals. So first we're going to talk about adding decimals. There are 3 easy steps to remember when adding decimals. The first step is to write down the numbers, one under the other, with the decimal points lined up. Now you can see that I have my 2 numbers written down. My decimal points are lined up. So now our second step is to put in zeros if needed in order to be placeholders. So you can see we need a 0 here and a 0 here as placeholders, and now we are ready to add. So it's just like adding any normal numbers. You start over here at the right. Don't forget your decimal point. And there you go. All right, we're going to try out another example. This time there are 3 numbers that we are going to add together, but we're going to follow the exact same process. So again, the first thing that I'm going to do is write down my numbers, one under the other with the decimal points lined up. Sometimes what I do is I put the decimal point in first, and that helps me when I'm lining up my decimals to make sure that I'm keeping everything lined up. So we have all of our numbers written down, and as you can see, we do need to put in some zeros as placeholders. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. It's very important to keep everything nice and neat and lined up so you don't make any simple mistakes when you are adding. Once you have your numbers lined up, your zeros put in if needed, you are ready to go ahead and add. Don't forget your decimal point. And there you go. Okay, now we're going to move on to subtracting decimals. To subtract, you're going to follow the same method, line up the decimals, put in zeros if needed, and then subtract. Step number 2 when subtracting decimals is very, very important. So I'm going to write my numbers down. Okay, so there are my numbers. They're lined up, and you can see that we need to add a 0 right here under the 8. Once we have that 0 in, now we are ready to subtract. And there you go. Let's try out another one. All right, here we go. I apologize for the delay in getting to this next example. So now we are going to subtract another decimal, and this one is slightly different from the example before, and you're going to see why in just a second. So we're going to start by lining up our decimals. All right, now we have our two decimals lined up. So you're going to see how this one is different. This one is different because we have to put a 0 in our first decimal as the placeholder. And when you have a situation like this, it is very, very important to make sure that you don't forget to add in those zeros as placeholders. And then you just want to double check that you have all of your numbers lined up, one underneath the other. Your decimal points are lined up, and now you are ready to subtract. So we know we can't take 6 away from 0, so we have to. Okay, now we are ready to subtract. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Don't forget to bring down your decimal point. And there you go. So I hope that today's video helps you to remember how to add and subtract decimals. And you just need to remember 3 easy steps. Line the decimals up, make sure your decimal points are lined up correctly, put in zeros as placeholders if needed, and then you are ready to add or subtract.